But I am delighted on behalf of the Conul board to welcome you all to this morning's seminar about the Conul ERASMUS Staff Mobility Programme. Particularly glad to welcome former attendees of the programme and some of our colleagues who are here this morning that aren't from a library background, because obviously most of us are. I want to thank Peter and the Training and Development Group for the kind invitation and for all of the wonderful work that they do on the Conul programme, but also on so many other issues related to training development. It really is very much appreciated by the board and by colleagues across Conul and indeed beyond, particularly what you've managed to do over the last number of years. I often wonder, how we did make it through the last few difficult years and with the continuing challenges indeed associated with COVID-19. And I think maybe a little humorously, there's something in this quotation from Yeats about the Irish attitude that was incredibly helpful. Whatever it was, the resilience shown by Irish librarians during Conul, which continued to do so many great things since the staff mobility program last ran properly in 2019, which is something I'll return to in a moment. But, it has really been the last difficult couple of years. So it's so pleasing to have this morning session where we can all meet up again online, but obviously particularly looking forward to, which I know you'll hear more about later on in the day, when we can have the staff mobility program return in person. Just a little bit about Conul. I suspect most people on this call know quite a bit about Conul already, but just to remind everyone that Conul is the consortium of national and university librarians, and we are the representative body of research libraries in Ireland and Northern Ireland. And we're at the heart of Ireland's global advance in new research, excellence in scholarship and teaching, digital depth and cultural breadth. And we have 13 members. And there are two particularly useful characteristics that distinguish Conul from other library groups or associations. Firstly, it is an all-island body, so there are members from all over the island of Ireland, and we're particularly pleased to work very closely with our colleagues in the University of Ulster and in Queen's University in Belfast. And secondly, Conul is an independent structure outside of the governance of many other groupings, which may be part of larger sectoral organisations. And this freedom allows us to focus on what we consider most important for our members and to engage with those issues from the perspective that we consider most appropriate for our members, rather than sometimes having to toe a particular party line or be consistent with a wider organisation's agenda. So, we all find Conul extremely useful, I must say. And, obviously, as I said, the last number of years have been very difficult. The last in-person Conul ERASMUS scheme was actually announced on the 5th of March 2020. And 1 week later, the 12th of March 2020, was when the then Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, announced what was originally intended to be a 2-week lockdown. Little did we know the roller coaster we were getting on at that particular time. So obviously, we haven't had an in-person Conul ERASMUS scheme since 2019. And despite that and so many other challenges, great things continue to happen throughout Conul, particularly I would have to say through the work of the groups that continues to work virtually, and indeed had a particularly important role as part of our response to COVID-19 by sharing experiences and sharing approaches as we all learn to cope with providing service and supporting library users during the pandemic. In October that year, 2020, we made a very significant step when we endorsed the Library Association of Ireland statement on the content crisis as part of the ebook SOS campaign, which I hope many of you are familiar with now, and I think a growing number of people in Ireland and across Europe are. It's a real issue that we continue to campaign about. And also incredibly, I think later that year in December 2020, the new Conul strategy for 2020 to 2022 was launched, completely prepared virtually as we were all working online, and to use that dreadful word, when we all had to pivot to online meetings and online focus groups and so on, so different to how we would have prepared previous strategies. And of course, like this morning, we all became very adept at organising online events, and we had a very successful teaching and learning seminar that year, and also a very important seminar that year related to the ebook SOS campaign about the importance of open education resources, or OERs. And I guess we did kind of gather ourselves a bit better after the initial shock in 2020. So but by May 2021, we were able to have a virtual conference. And that was very successful. It was a relatively brief conference. It was one day, but it really was important, as I'm sure a lot of people found during particularly the darkest days of the pandemic. That sense of community that you got from those online events was so important, as many of us were working from home in isolation, sometimes from other people and certainly from other colleagues. Again, earlier this year, Conul, unfortunately, like so many other organizations, had to issue a statement on Ukraine and the Russian invasion there, and particularly concerned about our library colleagues and library collections in that country as a result of the terrible violence and unfortunately ongoing violence. And more positively, and just last month, we had our annual conference back in person in May 2022, and it really was a great success. And I think anyone who was at that can testify to the buzz that was at that annual conference, and just the sheer pleasure of meeting up with colleagues that we had continued to meet and work with online and so on, but really difficult to replicate the joy and the energy and the dynamism that you get from meeting up with colleagues in person, which we had a wonderful couple of days down in Limerick just last month. And then very importantly, and something else that I'm closely involved in, is that next month in July, the IFLA World Library Information Congress is coming to Dublin. Again, itself delayed since 2020. And Conul is a key supporter of that. And I am very grateful to Conul myself for their support in terms of for bringing IFLA to Dublin. So as you can see, despite the fact that really most of our activities have been online since 2019 due to COVID, still quite a lot happening. And there's still lots more to do as well in terms of what I think the future of Conul holds. First of all, I think it really is important, as I said a moment ago, that annual conference was really successful, and you could really feel the energy that people had at that. And it's important to build on the success of that into the future, to pick out some of the important themes and issues were debated, that things like equality, diversity, and inclusion, the importance of artificial intelligence, and all these other new challenges that are facing libraries. And it's going to be an opportunity to address that, in that we do and are working on a new strategy. As I mentioned, we managed to prepare one virtually for 2020 to 2022, but that obviously will expire at the end of this year, and a new strategy is required. And an important aspect of that is going to be a review of the membership of Conul. So Conul, as I said, has had 13 members now, rather steady for the last number of years, but we do get regular inquiries from other organizations about membership, and the higher education and research landscape in Ireland is changing quite a bit, and has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. So that's something we're going to have to return to, I think, as part of that strategy process. And finally, and most importantly and relevant to today, we're really looking forward to the Erasmus Staff Mobility Programme returning to be in person in 2023. And as I said, I know you're going to hear more about that later on, so I won't say any more about that, except to say that I think it's impossible to really, replace the benefit that's going to come from that when it does. So Gurv Mila Mahagav, thank you very much. Buint Hannah Vasamadin, do enjoy the morning. And I really do hope, as I've seen so many of you before since 2017 in person in Dublin, that I will get to meet many of you in 2023. And it's now my great pleasure to hand over to Orla Nickay, the Associate